Absolute Life Crew coming for you. Going to bring out our first monthly challenge. Hello, everyone, and good morning, good afternoon, whatever time it is that you're listening to us. We appreciate you joining. Today is an exceptional day. We have a wonderful guest that I am so excited to interview today. And we're going to talk a little bit about his history, how we came to be, how we met down in Miami, and really how we got here today. So without further ado, we have Adelaido Godinez III, or Ad. He's born and raised in Muleshoe, Texas, enlisted in 1990, went to West Point, served until 2021, went on one tour in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait, 2 in Bosnia, and 2 in Korea, served at the pleasure of the president. He received his undergraduate at West Point, received his MBA from Hawaii Pacific, master's in operational art from Sam's Jedi School, and currently working on an MBOE from OSU's Fisher College of Business. He's a huge advocate of the Defenders of Freedom, funded by TBI Therapy to Resilience, Brain Health in Coppell, Texas, which we'll talk more about today. His business is SOIE Solutions, and he is a coach and leadership development consultant. His values are strength, courage, and love. And Ad, oh my gosh, what an intro. Super excited to chat with you today. How are we feeling? How are you doing?
I'm actually feeling pretty good. I'm glad we're here. I think this is part of the process, and I have not trusted the process. I have not been part of it. This is why it's taken me so long to get healthier. But I'm beginning to realize that, having the conversation, preparing yourself for the conversation is really about working through my own fight. And if working through my own fight will help someone else, then God willing, that's what happens. And they know someone else who has clearly been, successful in every single possible way, fights depression, fights PTSD, fights believing in himself. We're just, just like everybody else is probably going through some version or scale of it.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll help someone.
Yeah. And I forgot to tee it up that today we're really going to be talking about, I think we'll talk on a couple subjects, one being men's mental health, as we'll naturally fall into that conversation, but PTSD and how you're dealing with it, how to help people that are dealing with it, and maybe even help people who maybe don't realize they have PTSD. Like, what are some of the triggers? Like, I think we associate it with military, service.
Exactly.
But there are other ways.
Other traumas.
Yeah, other traumas. So we'll get into all of that. I'm just I want to say I'm very appreciative and proud that you're spending your time with us today, or with me, to talk more about this, because it is a sensitive subject. And I think as we talk about men's mental health, it is it's taboo. It's been taboo in our, and I think more in your generation than mine, but it's still way far behind where it needs to be. And it takes people like you, like me, really people who are willing to open up and talk about it, to hopefully get other people to open up and talk about it. So with that said, we'll table all that stuff. Let's get to know you a little bit better. You're born in Texas. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing, and I think the big question is, like, why did you choose to go serve your country?
Well, so I'm a first generation American. My dad was an illegal until Ronald Reagan was president, and he earned his green card. But I never felt exactly like I fit in. But that was all in my head.
Yeah.
Let me say that, I was a part of in Texas. There's if you have you're a high performing young person, there's a program called Gifted and Talented. And I was part of Gifted and Talented since 5th grade. I read 1984 in 5th grade in Alice Lyles' 5th grade class, GT class, Gifted and Talented. And and I didn't understand what the village was doing for me at the time, right?
Yeah.
I ended up in the student council president in high school. I ended up being the on the football team captain, but the whole time I just felt different. I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I was a part of the in group. Um,
Mm.
no matter that I was, it just didn't feel like it. And so I dated my first girlfriend my senior year in high school. Um, and one night I finally made it to the dance after work, the high school dance after football and after work. And so I show up and she's dancing with a guy. I get all, butt hurt. And the next day, the recruiter shows up and I sign the enlistment papers almost immediately. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever, let's go. I'm ready to get out of this town.
Yeah.
Right. So in other words, I joined the army because I was brokenhearted.
Yeah.
Honest truth. Um,
Well, I'm just thinking back to like my high school experience, and I think so I actually because they go to your high schools, right? And hey, you can sign up, and I remember going to sign up, and I was in a similar place, maybe not exactly the day after a dance, but just feeling like what about like I need some direction. Like everybody's gonna be going off to college. I did not have the grades. Like, what am I? Maybe I
I
should.
didn't have the money.
Yeah, I was. Why not get some structure? And unfortunately, because of my the history with my lungs, they were like, "You're probably not going to pass, dude. Like you're not going to get in." But it's just funny. I think a lot of people can relate to that in high school, and as we get into it later, I think that's such a mentally challenging time for any young adult. But I think like where are we going next, especially if you don't have like that plan next, like you don't have the college stuff that you were working towards. Like I really had a hard time with that because I didn't have options. I mean, I wasn't even graduating on time. I ended up graduating a year late. So I want to sympathize on that. Like that
I
time
appreciate
in life
that.
is so hard.
It was so hard, right? And you're I think most kids at that age really don't feel like they fit in anyway,
Yeah.
right? And being a first generation American and I never really fit in like with the Hispanics or Mexican community where I grew up. They called me a coconut, brown on the outside, white on the inside because I studied and I
Oh
did the
my
work.
gosh.
Yeah, right. And so
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
right.
Yeah.
And so so what the army taught me, I joined the army and it was fun, right? It was structured. The work was hard. We went out. We ran 2 miles for the first time. I don't remember running 2 miles working out for football, but I love football, and I love the hard work of football. Um, the physicality of it was something that I just enjoyed. Just like you're training for these Ironmans.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to swim. I learned how to swim in a ditch in Texas, an irrigation ditch. So I really never knew how to swim, and so when I did my first little triathlon, it was a sprint triathlon, and the swim was hard. 800 meters was a long ways for me,
Oh yeah.
and so, but the physicality of the army and the structure helped me uh, find a place I could fit in. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I enlisted and I did really well. And when you're enlisted and a private, an E1, E2, E3, E4, it's it's easy to be successful if you show up on time in the right uniform, ready to do the job that you're asked to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's really simple to excel if you're motivated enough to do that. And then when someone asks for a volunteer and you say, "Yeah, I'll do it,"
Mm-hmm.
uh, people look at you. And so my platoon leader in Korea, my first assignment, she looks at me and she says, "Have you ever heard of West Point?" I didn't even associate it with the TV show The Blue and the Gray at the time, right? That was in my generation, that was a
Okay.
big TV series. Um, but I didn't understand what West Point was. No clue at all. But again, yeah, I'll do it. I was just that kid. It sounds hard. Let me go see if I would like it.
Yeah.
I did not like it. Uh, I did not like it. And yet there's my my helmet, my hat from the academy that I still kept with me because the people that I met at the academy are just incredible. They
Mm,
were just like, and although I again didn't really feel like I fit in, um, they treated me like an equal.
mhm,
Uh, I have tons of friends that support me in enormous ways, in emotionally, um, mentally, um, just really incredible people. I that was a game changer for me going to West Point. It changed my life
mm. More than, do you think it's more than just going into the military?
more than just going into the military. When I say serve at the pleasure of the president, as an enlisted person, you do tours.
Mhm,
You enlist for a 3-year tour and then you can get out. You enlist for a 4-year tour and you can get out.
mhm,
You enlist for 6 years, you can get out. As a commissioned officer, you request a resignation, and it can be, you cannot be let out.
mhm,
Uh, and I had one time when I really thought I was going to get out. Um, it was at the end of my first series, my requirement to stay in the Army.
mhm,
I went out and I interviewed with a couple of organizations, and I thought, oh, well, I can make more money doing this.
mhm,
And nothing felt, it didn't feel right to get out. The values that the Army instilled in me, the camaraderie that I felt, the character of the people that were around me, and there is nothing like leading men. At the time, it was there were no women in the infantry, and so I don't use that term, as in any way derogatory to having women in the infantry. I think it's a great thing,
mhm,
um, but but at the time I led men,
mhm,
and it made me a better person trying to be the leader that they deserved.
mhm. That's incredible. I think when you say like that hits me a little weird when you say try to be the leader they deserve, and I think it speaks to your character of you're focused more on others than yourself. You're leading to lead them, and it's not focused on like I need to be a better leader for me or for a promotion or for something like that. You say that right out of the gates of like it's for them, like they need what they deserve, and I think that speaks volume to who you are, Ad.
I never thought of it that way, right? I only thought of, well, these guys really need good leaders, and so
Mhm.
I'll be better because of them.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, for sure.
wasn't even a thought.
Well, it is when you're interviewing you. So as we're talking about, I mean, service for your country, you're first generation American, like, and maybe that's why you didn't feel like you fit in. Right. And were your parents, did they speak English or were they like were they fluent or bilingual when
uh,
were you their translator? Because I think that's pretty common too. You
that's
see.
very common.
Mhm.
My father became very fluent in English by the time I was in middle school, so
Okay.
he was okay. But what my mom and dad did, they did what their generation did for them, right? We lived in a trailer house. I had a roof over my head,
Mhm.
and I had a you know money for breakfast so I could eat at school. I could eat lunch at school, and I had a dinner when I got home. I started working when I was 10 for my dad, picking rocks out of a field. I'll never forget that. Literally picking rocks out of a field was my first job. Um,
What was the purpose?
so that you could plant um, plant corn and wheat into the field because the rocks would damage the planting instruments. And
Gotcha.
so the easiest job to do in the field was to I drove a bucket loader at 10 years old. And just, you know, after all summer long, I'd drive down the road, find a big rock that had been plowed up, pick it up, 10 years old, 12 years old. That's the work I did. And then
That's
14 to 13 to, I think 15, 16, it was manual labor of some type, right? Running irrigation fields, um, hoeing,
mhm.
going out and chopping weeds out of the field, just really hard work. And I really didn't want to do that. That
Yeah.
was not the future I wanted.
What do they
And
say? Building character.
it
My kids knew
did.
all
It
of
taught me how to work hard.
that. Yeah, it's hard work. Well, I wanted to ask, as like talking about serving for your country, though, what did it mean to you? I think being a first generation American, it kind of finding like helping you come into the person that you are today, right? And helping you find you. What did it mean to you to serve for your country?
Um, at first, it just meant to serve and to be the best leader I could be. That's what it meant at first. And Dana Crow will laugh at this. When I was promoted to major, then lieutenant colonel, and then colonel, I realized I had a seat at the table, and it was time for me to bring others and other perspectives to the table.
Mm.
And that's what it meant to serve, is to bring um, women and other minorities to the table so that their perspectives, their voice could be heard.
Mhm.
And they felt heard and they felt valued for their perspective. Not because they were a minority, not because they were a woman, but because they were heard.
Yeah.
And uh, and so that's what service meant to me for a long period of time. Was I was responsible for getting their voice heard.
Mhm. I think it's such an interesting, I know we were just talking about this, but it's such an interesting way you say serve. You keep using the word serve instead of like it was my choice, like just I had to lead them. I had to lead them. And it's like really through just serving them and giving them a platform that naturally, I'm sure you have diehard followers because of the way you enabled others, right? And
I
now I feel like that's where we hear about like, and especially I think it's coming to corporate America, thank goodness, because we talk about how leadership has changed so dramatically. And now we have the psychology, we have the studies to prove like uh, that the hard and fast, cut and dry, like a dictator, it doesn't work in 99% of situations. And problems are solved faster when there's open dialogue and there's trust and there's this environment of like respect, no matter what level you sit at, and that everybody has a voice. And I say that because I think in corporate America, like even just in my 10 years, I'm in, just the tech sector, but like in tech, it still was very much like the loudest person when I first started, loudest person, most successful individual contributor was the leader, but they weren't necessarily like the best people person or they didn't know how to support people. They had their way that worked for them, but they didn't understand how other people worked and what could work great for them too, right? And this idea of autonomy and whatnot, right? And transparency, like that was not something that was, I think, echoed because it starts at the leader. The leader has to be that transparent. And so it's cool that, that's really where your brand is all about the service. And in return, that kind of echoes what um, hopefully all of corporate America is starting to do. I feel it greatly at my job, which is an incredible hierarchy to support.
I'm glad to hear it. I don't really. Um, I'm still learning these concepts around branding. right? And so, uh, I you know, I believe a leader's job is to remove obstacles so people can do the, can meet their potential, to fully realize their full potential, and that development and growth is as important as the objectives or outcomes that you're trying to create.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, what we really want, and the whole reason I'm having this talk with you about PTSD and men's mental health, is because it's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
I I would rather not have this conversation with you. I would rather not everyone know or potentially know that, yeah, I struggle,
Mm-hmm.
right? I would rather them to continue to see me with this outward projection that I have of this positive,
Mm-hmm.
outgoing, fun-loving, happy person.
Yeah.
But the truth is that's not always true.
Right.
There are days I can't get out of bed. There are days that I feel so guilty about everything that I'm living,
Uh-huh.
that everyone that I couldn't help, there, it doesn't matter how true the narrative is.
Yeah.
I feel responsible for them.
Yeah. Even though, and like we talked about the other day, logically, you can say, like, I can't hold that weight. That doesn't make sense. There's nothing logically that I can hold myself responsible for the
Nothing.
way I made my decisions then, or given this situation or whatnot. Or maybe it was like the flight you couldn't catch home. Like
Right.
it's situational. It's not something that was in your control, but you still carry that burden.
That's right.
Yeah.
And some days it's heavier than others, right? But in one day, just last year, it lasted for 2 weeks, and I could not get out of that guilt for what I couldn't do for an important person in my life.
Yeah.
And I hadn't talked to this person in 10 years. And when this person took their life, as inane a thought as it was, I couldn't get out of my own way, and I couldn't get the voices to stop in my head, and I couldn't stop rerunning that same, the collateral damage that we created in Iraq, that I created,
Mm-hmm.
right? When in the way that I grew up, and the values that came to truly be mine, is that I am responsible for everything that happens and fails to happen in everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to work for corporate America, it was so obvious that was not the way the world works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people would look at me when I would say, "Yep, that's on me. I did that." And when I would take responsibility for my team, for something my team did or failed to, I would give credit to my team all the time for the things that we did.
Yeah.
But for every failure, that's on me.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are probably, when they listen to this, they're going to say, "Do you want a job? Do you want to be my boss?" I'd love to stand behind you. Um, but as we're talking through this, um, we're talking about some of these harder things that you have to carry with you. And I think um, people who aren't related to the military or haven't had any exposure, don't have family or friends who've served and done tours, um, like the hard things and the decisions that you have to make in, whether it be every day, I mean, depending on what you're doing, right? Or what, you know, your job is for, a week, or what kind of mission you're on. There's some pretty horrible decisions that you guys have to make for the safety of, the crew, or the team that you're operating with. And I mean, we don't have to get into too much detail, but I mean, this kind of leads into the PTSD conversation, right? Of, like, what were some of the hardest things that you had to do that you're willing to share, um,
Well,
decisions or whatnot?
well, here's the one that popped into my head. Right, we're on an infill We are in an infiltration mission to get to an objective. We're going through a wadi. We're about 10 miles out. And a sheep herder and his family we come across, and they shoot at us because we're moving through the night, and the dogs start to bark, and my rear platoon fires upon, returns fire immediately, and I make the decision. I report it up, and I decide to keep moving, and we keep moving towards the objective. We get to the objective. um, we see the person we're looking for. We engage. My sniper engages. It's actually my first sergeant. I tell my first sergeant looks at me, and in that moment he was lost, right? And he asked me if it was a righteous shot, and I said, yes, sir. You did exactly what I asked you to do, right? Next day, the father shows up at our FOB, forward operating base, and his son is on the hood of the vehicle, and I'll never forget it. And I remembered that was my decision, right? Not to stop, not to render aid, to keep moving, to get to the objective that we were assigned. And I carry that with me.
Oh.
The boy couldn't have been more than 13 years old. And so, you're managing, when you're leading people, you're managing the real world, the objective, the environment in ways that you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Right. And if you listen to the first part of this discussion, everything that happens and fails to happen is on me.
Uh-huh.
I'm here to serve and protect. Right. And so, more about my history, and that you can understand why I carry the guilt now. The people I'm supposed to protect the most, the children,
Yeah.
I failed at. And so when I say I carry a deep guilt, it's there.
Yeah.
And I have found a way so I can talk about it today.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't know, I didn't even know this until Saturday. Talking is healing.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it back to the world, reliving it. I relived it from May 1st to May 10th in a vivid fashion. Every one of those collateral damages. And the guilt, I lost 5 days. I lost 5 days trying to numb the pain in those 10 days. Woke up at 1:30 in the morning preparing for the remarks that I was going to give on May 17th, on Saturday. And I just begged the Lord to help me,
Mm-hmm.
find a message. And there's a daily devotional. I opened it up to page May 10th. And the devotional said, I have given you these trials because you are strong enough to deal with them. I've given you these challenges because they are meant to make you different. And I immediately started writing down the story about what I was going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just flowed. And I just cried the entire time I was writing. But that was the first round of real deep healing.
Mm-hmm.
This is, from that conversation to right now, this is probably the 15th or 16th round from May 10th of that healing.
Yeah. And you carried that with you in like just fighting this fight all by yourself.
Yeah, because that's what we're supposed to do, right?
For years. Yeah.
For over 20 years.
Over 20 years. And I mean, I know when we get into this, like how lonely that is, though, but that's how you're wired. And I was going to step back too and say, like, when I was going to say, maybe not even the things that you, not even just the things that you had to endure on when you're touring and these missions and the things that happen, but it's as a leader, I'm sure a lot of it is also the not the things you experienced, but it's the decisions that you made. And even if you replay it, you like, would you have done it differently? Like you had no understanding of what the outcome was, right? We always say hindsight's 2020.
Hindsight's 2020, but
And so
is it?
logically, yeah, you say logically, I can't hold myself accountable. But like this goes into the whole um it doesn't change who you are, and like you still feel responsible. um this goes into the loss of your high school friend who took his
Right.
life. And I think it goes when we talk suicide too, it's like the hardest thing with that is why and what if. Those are the two questions that I remember when I went through losing my best friend was why, a million times why, right? You just like you can't make sense of it. And then what if we were closer like we used to be? What if we were, what if I reached out to him? And what if like these two questions combined make for a nasty, nasty cocktail
It
of
does. And I called it a vicious cycle in my talk, in my remarks.
mhm,
Right. You, when when you don't find a way to get out of a vicious cycle, you spiral into this world that you don't belong. You
mhm,
know, you feel less than.
mhm,
And metaphorically, I would find myself, you know, in a hole that I deserved in my head, I deserved to be in because why did I deserve to have the life I have?
mhm. And what we hear, and I've heard this before, is no matter what it is, whether, and I'm sure it's heavy within the military, but survivor's remorse of like,
Survivor's
if
guilt is real.
you, yeah. And so the experience there of like, I'm sure losing soldiers or it to this, it feels like you take ownership of this, the survivor's remorse of why do I deserve to be here if he took his own life, and it questions your mortality of like why am I here?
Why me?
Yeah, why me?
Right? I mean, I, so one boss asked me to stay behind and be the rear detachment commander, and I said I will if you promise I get to go forward. I will if you promise me I can go deploy. That way I can be with the guys that I help train.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care what role you put me in, but just let me go forward and be with the guys I help train. And at the end of the day, the next boss's wife says, we can't break this up, right? This is a great team. Ad's doing a fantastic job. He's got to stay here. And I remember feeling crushed that night and feeling like, great, I'm leaving more people behind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not serving where I need to serve, um, which was wrong. What I was doing, it was extremely important.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's these narratives that you have in your head that make no sense.
Mm-hmm. But they create so much like turmoil, and like you said to me, and I'd never heard it said the way that you said it, which is depression doesn't care.
It doesn't care.
It doesn't care what justifications you have. It doesn't care what support system you have. It doesn't care. It just multiplies negative thoughts.
It doesn't matter how successful you are. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how many people you try to impact. Depression has a power all its own. And so, you know, in October, I thought my wife was going to leave me. November, my friend comes and grabs me, takes me down to Texas. I'm in Texas and I start to heal by doing hard work and spending time with my friend and his family. And they are just showering love on me like you wouldn't believe. And I am physically and mentally angry that I'm in Texas and not at my home.
Mhm.
I didn't understand. And what we were doing, and I don't know if Joel knew what he was doing when he did it, but he got me back into a routine of the physicality of work, right? We were out sweating. We
Mhm.
were out digging. We were out cleaning up the farm. We were moving things. We were doing things for his family and his extended family and the community. And, you know, it reset me physically to be able to do the hard work of my mental and emotional work.
Mhm.
And and so my buddy had already laid out a plan so that I could go to get one of these support systems from Defenders of Freedom, an incredible organization led by Donna, who is an incredible human being who lost her son. Um, and she and I talk on occasion and still do. I just met with my Dr. E, and they fund a treatment for TBI, traumatic brain injury, at Resiliency Brain Health. Dr. Godot, she came up with a protocol after suffering, I think she said 6 or 7 TBIs as a motorcycle rider. Um, I think amateur and then pro, female motorcycle dirt rider. Um, and so she went to Baylor and so many other places to figure out the neurological potential of a fix
Mhm.
for things that were different for her. She couldn't find anything, so she pursued an approach that she thought would be useful to others. And I believe they've been working on TBI for over 20 years now, and have helped numerous of us veterans and a number of other people reset our brains.
Mhm.
So I was already doing the physical work, but I still had the neurological pathways. You just talked about it, not not 2 or 3 episodes ago,
Yeah.
about the neurological pathways. My I had gutters in my pathway,
Yeah.
um, and they were so deep that any anything would set it off. Right. Before I ended up going to Texas for the treatment, someone pulled out in front of me, um, in a very rude way, and I have a problem with authority for a number of different reasons, which is ironic.
Very ironic.
um, and when authority figures feel entitled and act in an entitled way,
Mhm.
uh, for whatever stupid reason, I feel like I've got a responsibility to hold them accountable.
Yeah.
So this person pulled in front of me, and I hopped out of the car, to confront them about their sense of entitlement, and it scared the bejesus out of my wife. Um, I was calm. I was not outwardly pissed off. I
Mhm.
was. I appeared to be in control, but I was not in control.
Yeah.
Right. That fight, flight, or freeze mechanism had kicked in. My cortisol levels were spiking.
Yeah.
I don't think I slept that day or the next day. Um, I ended up at TBI in at Resiliency Brain Health in Coppell, Texas. And that morning, I woke up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. There were 4 other guys in the house, 3 other guys at the time, um, about 4 total that stayed with. So 5 of us total that stayed in the house that were going through the same treatment. And there was already a young man at the table at the breakfast table, when I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I almost cried
Mhm.
because I'm not alone anymore.
Yeah.
Right, that realization that I'm not the only one going through this,
Mhm.
it became real and palatable. And we sat and we talked. We had coffee. Um, I went out walking, and then we all left together for our first day at Resiliency Brain Health.
So is this outpatient, like, are you like staying on site, or were you just you're going there for the day? and coming back and staying at a house or hotel. What's like the setup like?
Yeah, so we're in a house that is basically a B and B or what is the
Airbnb? Yeah.
it's not really a B and B because the nutritionist had left Lifestream, so we didn't have the nutritionist to help us out with the nutrition side of the house.
Gotcha.
They had to do it in house with the Resiliency Brain Health, so it was more of a what's the other service where you rent a house from people? VRBO. It,
VRBO, yeah.
yeah, it was basically a VRBO, and then we would drive in every day.
Okay.
Um, I was resolved to continue my habits. So I'm looking for a 5x8 card. I created a 5x8 card where I would check the block. Y is a function of X. My health is a function of the inputs of going to sleep at 9:30 at night.
Mhm.
I may not go to sleep at 9:30 at night, but I'm in bed at 9:30 at night.
Yeah.
When I get up in the morning, I drink some coffee, I meditate, I go through my devotional, and then I do some kind of physical activity, some kind of physical training, what I call PT.
Hmm.
And that checks the block on my physical health, my mental health, and my spiritual health.
Hmm.
Still working on the oxytocin piece of it, the community health.
Yeah.
Um, but 3 out of 4 is where I'm focused right now, right? Focused on me.
Hmm.
Uh,
And these four areas, is this something that was kind of brought to you through this program?
it was.
These are the four programs, both physically, like psychologically, communally. Um, they have kind of this program in which they're having you follow.
They do. Most The centerpiece is this thing called TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, where they take um, a big mag. I meant to have the picture. I
Oh no,
clearly
you're
didn't have
good.
the picture to show you, but there's a brace on your head with several key points, and then there's a magnet that you know that they run across your head to kind of reset those neurological pathways.
Mm-hmm.
And the gutter became, um, back to the surface. And so it was filled in, and the brain that heals itself. It's a great book, by the way, The Brain That Heals Itself.
Mm-hmm.
It reset my brain along with some other activities that we did. I just read an article today about athletes that um, learn how to slow down their eyes. I can't remember the process, but that was a part of our process about relearning how to reconnect our eyes to our activities. I shared with you that once we worked on focusing our eyes with a bunch of stuff going on behind us, we hopped in basically a TIE fighter. Um, and then we had to stay focused on a lollipop to make sure that our eyes stay focused. There was a balance machine. Um, I went into um, one of those silence chambers, um, the oxygen bariatric chamber. You know what I'm talking about? To
It's supposed to
isolate.
have like no noise, no sight, like it's pitch black. Was it one where you were in water? Like were you laying in water?
Not water, it was all oxygen, hyper
Okay,
oxygenation,
gotcha.
hyperbaric. And so, again, it's about healing and inflammation. And up until then, I had really stopped running. The inflammation in my knees and my shoulders was so much that I carried that pain with me all the time. I've been running since, not a lot, but more,
Hmm.
you know. Whereas, Eileen and I think we've run 9 marathons together. So to be running 2 to 3 miles now feels like I'm free again. Uh, I shared with you I've run a couple of sprint triathlons, maybe a little bit longer. Um, so to be moving and doing hard work and moving heavy things has always been an important part of my life.
Yeah.
And to be able to do those things again is extremely, Uh,
It's so beneficial. I think naturally we've always thought of mental health or emotional health as that's more important than physical health, right? Like, well, if you're mentally in a good place and you're spiritual, like you have those natural like it benefits other activities. And actually they say I think it used to be you need to start there and then physical activity comes more natural or something along those lines. But now in more recent history we've come to realize that the physical activity actually has more impact on your mental and emotional stability and health in general than I think we ever gave true like award to or acknowledgement to. And that's been kind of a cool turn of the century, if you will, or turn of the perspective of where we're in such a, and now there's a lot of foo-foo stuff out there that's like we don't know what's real. There's new findings every day and studies that you see all the time and they're not fully confirmed. But I think it's just an interesting topic of mental health is so related to physical health as well. It can really increase your mental and your emotional stability when you have regular physical activities in your process. So, like to your point, you're going through, you're focusing on all four areas, but the physical you kind of called that out. Now you come from a long history of doing hard shit, doing a lot of hard shit that I'm sure a lot of people can't, fully relate to, but it's that reward too, that feel good you get after doing a run. Something about running, and I don't know what it is. I saw a study that said if you run 30 minutes a day, 6 days or 5 days a week, then they say and again, another study of this stuff I'm talking about that who knows if it's true, but it said if you run 30 minutes a day for 6 days, or it was 5 or 6 days a week, you decrease your biological age by like 9 years on average.
right.
And I'm like, it make like I've been obsessing over the VO2 max and like that association to longevity, as well as like leg muscles, your quads, and the big muscles in your body, like the size and health of those are directly correlated to longevity as well. And I'm all about the longevity stuff. And so learning about all this stuff has been so fantastic. It's incredible to me, like where all this is coming from. I'm curious, what do you take any more natural supplements as well as part of your nutrients? I know like there's obviously reasons of like maybe rich nutrients in specific things that you're eating, but are there other nutrients like a big one right now that's all over is like creatine and helping with, just like recovery and muscle. And I'm just curious, like I think a lot of people, and me included, I noticed when I take creatine and I take it every day, I feel a lot clearer. And I have, crazy ADHD, ADD stuff, and I have to do a lot of
Right.
actions to help with my focus as well. But I've noticed with creatine, I do feel a lot clearer, as well as amino acid therapy that I go through that are all the positive things that go into, your brain and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we're going to nerd out here for a little bit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, let's
And
do it.
and this was the key to the kingdom for me at in the TBI treatment at Resiliency Brain Health in Coppell, Texas. So when you've gone through PTSD, there's an old book called The Body Keeps the Score, right? And so your cortisol levels are already spiked. And I read this book, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. Um, and your body keeps a score. And so it stores this cortisol. You're already steeping, right? And cortisol is a good thing too. It's what wakes you up in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but when your cortisols are already spiking, you don't have a process to pull them down like physical activity,
Mm-hmm.
which engages and changes the chemicals going through your body, dopamine, testosterone, endorphins, right?
Yeah.
Oxytocin. When you don't have something that brings those cortisol levels down at the right time, you're up for days because your cortisol levels are just spiking the whole time for whatever reason, right? Your body's already in that space. And I went to one doc. He was a chiropractor, a really great guy, Brian. And he showed me what, he did a number of different exams, and he showed me where my body was keeping the score. He literally pointed at, right behind here on the other side. He could show me right here where the cortisol was being stored.
Wow.
And so, boom, that opens it up. Now I'm having a conversation at TBI, and we're like, okay, when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you got to do is you got to eat breakfast, because that's going to bring your cortisol levels down. Your body is going to respond by creating the right things. And you're preparing your body now to work out. Not what I was doing at the time. I was doing intermittent fasting. So my cortisol levels were staying level or even spiking, right? Because I would get angry when the Prius is in the left-hand lane going 55 miles per hour and I want to get to work. And I would get angry at a Prius for no reason.
Nobody can relate with that, by the way.
Entitled. Remember the word entitled.
Yeah.
So now I'm learning right now. Okay, so this is a chemical imbalance that's happening in my system that I can change if I do my habits right, and I throw in some oxytocin on top of that by spending time with people. My body will work better. Okay, so now I learned that, and then I learned that the inflammation piece. How do I treat that? And I start to learn about NAD+, the B vitamins, the Ks, right? And so these are impacting the inflammation, so I can do more physical labor, more work to feel good and create more endorphins, more dopamine, and spend more time with people to create the oxytocin fix that I need to feel better about myself. And so those are the nutrients, those are the supplements that I'm taking. I take NAD+ every single morning sublingually. I'm trying to find, if somebody decided that drug, that chemical was a good supplement for longevity, and it spiked the price of it. And I mean, if there was one thing the VA could do different, instead of giving us a ton of drugs that numb us to the world, and instead gave us NAD+, the B vitamins and the K vitamins to deal with the real world as it is, we would heal. We would be on the right path. And the VA is doing the best they can, right? And they're good people. And we have not spent enough time understanding how post-traumatic stress disorder works in the body. Right? We just want to numb it.
Just fix. Just fix.
Yeah.
Let's not understand it and why, and like reverse engineer it, like this process you're going through. Let's just fix it. I want the end result. It's the miracle pill.
And this. Again, episode number 7, right? You're talking about your experience with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca. And having that experience and going through and dealing with what you're dealing with, the fight that you're in to live your life to its fullest. And that's what we somehow, some way, and I think it was whenever we decided pain was the 5th vital sign. We don't want to deal with pain. And pain is good. Working through pain is really good. It teaches you what you can do. Right? Doing hard work is about recognizing that it's hard work. And I can do it.
If something switches. I think whether you started doing hard stuff and you fell in love with the feeling after, or in my case, I went through my ayahuasca experience and realizing how much my life changed from going through hell and back than what the feeling was after, of like, oh my God, I do feel different. And like, now I got to live different. Now I got to prove to myself, like, no more shortcuts. Like, no more shortcuts. You can do anything that you put your mind to if you're willing to sacrifice, whether it be
70.3.
Whether it be time, energy, whether it be social time, like whatever it is. And I, we talked about this offline, but um, like my journey was to stop drinking so I could train harder and that sort of thing. Well, then naturally, that led into the impact of that was, well, I wasn't as social anymore. And as much as I thought like, oh, this journey is mine and I'm supposed to do this on my own, I fell into a depression because, well, I wasn't drinking and I was spending a lot of my time training, which in turn, like I wasn't getting a lot of social interaction because all my social interaction was previously associated with drinking. And so I wasn't comfortable in those settings. Like I told you, I went to the hockey game and I wasn't drinking and I felt like weird. And I'm like, I'm just a person in the stands, but like I felt actually weird being there and not drinking. And it was just like I didn't feel myself. And so then it even reaffirmed that I had a problem. And it's that like this shouldn't be a reason why you enjoy this. Like you love this sport, like, and so again, it's just like that process, but it created a very lonely experience for me because I separated myself from my friends, from most people. When I was working out, it's like you're working out by yourself, you're doing these long runs, like a lot of time inside, and it was counterintuitive to what I thought it was doing. I thought I was like getting to know myself better, and I was really getting, with all this time by myself. But in reality, like when you spend that much time isolated, then socially you get anxious, and I started to have social anxieties. And then this all kind of went into my work as well, where I told you I had, and we did an episode on it, like I completely shut down for a week. I was debilitated. I couldn't do anything. And I had so much anxiety that like I had to go get professional help and, get put on drugs and whatnot. But it's just crazy how much this is me just like figuring it out, and like that's why I so appreciate you sharing your journey like this, because I think
Oh, and by the way, the entire environment is against us, right?
yeah.
If you like country music, every second song is about alcohol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? If you watch TV at all,
Mm-hmm.
every third commercial has something about alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Every TV show, every
Or food or
story,
unhealthy food, or
or
it's like
unhealthy food.
whether it be it's substance in some way, whether it's digesting, or completely, like you think about it, you're just watching mindlessly hours of television, not engaging socially, or what you are being shown is like order more food, or drink a beer. This is like, look at us, they're all sitting together, going to the park, drinking a 6-pack, and it's like this is fun. This is what you should be doing. You're like idyllic. That's cool. I want to be doing that. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to break the chain of your process that you've been found accustomed to. And it's not a problem until you realize that there's something in your way of living the life that you want to live. Like we talked about, that's what was alcohol for me. As I was like, well, if I want to be this dad that goes out and does all this outdoor stuff with my kids, or I want to, be physically fit and healthy, like ultimately, I didn't see myself as like having a drinking, like I didn't consider myself an alcoholic, although my wife would argue against that. But it was until I realized it's in my way of living what's making me depressed, because I'm not living that way. Because I keep seeing that, like, wait, I keep saying I want to do this and I want to do that, but I'm not doing it. And so then I decided it was a problem, even though you could argue it was a problem, right? And that's when push came to shove, and it was like, okay, this is that moment. That's that crossroads where do I double down on my lifestyle I'm still doing, or do I make a change? And that's when, and you said that your the daily, was it not affirmations, but the daily thing that you read,
Daily devotionals.
that one you had that day, you said it was about the pain of right now is because you can, or why you're facing this now is because you can you can manage it. It is something that you can learn from. I was just talking with Steven yesterday at work. We were talking about just going through hard times, and I was telling him, like, I'm not an overly religious person, but I'm very spiritual. I don't go to church every Sunday, but I'm very spiritual, and I absolutely have belief that like God has a plan for us, right? And so I was telling him, because he's going through some tough stuff, and I was like, when I'm going through the hardest of times, I don't know why, and I try not to figure out why, because then it's insanity. Like, why am I dealing with this, or why am I in this, horrible mental state? Why can't I get out of it? Like,
Right.
logically, like we talked about, logically, life is good. I have all these things, an incredible family, house, wife, like family, everything. I'm just like, it's perfect. But logic doesn't make sense when you're depressed. Depression doesn't care, right? And so I was saying the one thing I know for certain though is that it's in those tough times that you learn the most, or you're preparing for something later. You're being taught something, and that's why it's hard. So don't try and figure out what you're being taught right now. Just know that like you wouldn't be going through it if God didn't believe that you needed to be going through it, and that there's a reason for this. And you don't know what that reason is right now, but it could be you helping somebody add like you're doing now. You're voicing your experience. You're going through this hard transformation. It could be that you're helping somebody else by sharing the story. It could be that
That's
this,
the goal.
yeah, and also it's a healing process for you, right?
Is
Um, there's so many ways, but like you can't actually say like this is why. We have theories and reasons why it's helping us, but at the end of the day, like we can't control what happens to us. We can control how we react and how we move forward. And so um I just that was kind of a rant, but I
no,
just
it's a perfect rant because it forced me to open up the page that I was telling you about. So
mm,
this is a devotional Jesus Calling, May 10th. It's published, so you can, if anybody has it, they can read it. But I'm going to read it to you just so you hear what it exactly said.
yeah.
This is 1:33 in the morning,
Mm,
right? On that morning when I woke up, because I I didn't know what I was supposed to do with these set of remarks to
mhm.
fellow veterans about mental health. And
Yeah, and you were about to do this speech because you'd been asked to talk about PTSD. And to be fair, you said you had imposter syndrome. Like, who am I
immediately,
about this?
who
Why are
am I?
you asking me?
Right? I mean, I still haven't figured out how to get through mine, right? And
Yeah.
so I wake up and I don't know, I really don't know what to do. I'm just praying, I'm crying next to my wife. She's asleep. Thankfully, she's not hearing me with my little crying. And I go downstairs and then I pick this up and I read it. Do not resist or run from the difficulties in your life. These problems are not random mistakes. They are hand tailored blessings designed for your benefit and growth. Embrace all the circumstances that I allow in your life, trusting me to bring good out of them. View problems as opportunities to rely more fully on me. When you start to feel stress, let these feelings alert you to your need for me. Thus, your needs become doorways to deep dependence on me and increasing intimacy between us. Although self sufficiency, this is the myth that we all have.
Mhm.
Although self sufficiency is acclaimed in the world, reliance on me produces abundant living in my kingdom. Thank me for the difficulties in your life since they provide protection from the idolatry of self reliance. And this is the myth I grew up with, right? My
Mhm.
grandpa was this way, my dad was this way, every single leader that I was supposed to respect in the army was this way, right? They were self-reliant. They did everything themselves. I mean, the greatest of the great, General Petraeus, lived this model of self-reliance.
Mhm.
Um, but the reality,
Mhm.
the strength is in this vulnerability that you're showing, Taylor, and saying, I'm growing because I'm talking to you about what I'm experiencing.
Mhm.
I'm showing you that we can do this a different way.
Mhm.
That's strength.
Mhm.
When you talked about my values of strength, courage, and love, that is strength to be able to say, I can do it a different way.
Mhm.
I can reveal myself and show you this is the real me. I'm not hiding anything anymore.
Mhm.
And then having the courage to share it openly in a podcast like this is just incredible. And if there is anything greater love for your humankind, your fellow man, than to show them a path to healing, I don't think there's a better way. So those are my values, and that's why they're my values,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's about everybody else.
Yeah.
When you look at me and you say I'm a guy who's serving, It's you who's serving.
Well, and I feel when you say that, I was gonna say, going back to what you said, you've you have a tone of like unworthiness to being willing to share, like you almost come across that like, I'm not worthy, like I'm not worthy of people helping me, these people who've stepped into your life. That's been somewhat of like what I've picked up from your challenge and the way these people have stepped in, Joel, and a few of these others that you'd mentioned, how they stepped in to help you, and you're like, your reaction to it is like, I'm not worthy, partnered with, I shouldn't, like, I'm embarrassed that I need your help. And that's obviously logically so wrong,
It
but
is.
you feel that way because you're like, I should be self-reliant. I'm embarrassed that you're having to help me. I'm like, and that's when that the negative talk just like booms down, because it just
It
triples,
could.
multiplies, because, well, now you're getting help. Well, now I'm a piece of shit because I'm getting help. And then it's like this, derogatory path that you keep going down.
And
But
the
like,
truth
you're
is,
worthy of it, right?
and the truth is, that's real courage. That's real strength, right? Is to be able to say, I need help.
Mm-hmm.
There is not a single person. When you asked me to come on this, yes. What
Mm-hmm.
was the question? What did you need me to do? Right? I'm going to come and help.
I was shocked. I was like, yes, oh my gosh, okay, we got to do this. And I think that you're getting probably more out of this conversation than me, right? Like
Yes.
and
True.
I'm honored
True.
that that's the case. I am honored to have you here telling the story, because for me it's like, and Steven's so bummed he couldn't make it, because like we learned so much through other people's experiences and hearing how it's done. And it's been a weird journey, because people like Yvonne as well, and people are thanking us, and we're like, what are you talking about? Why are you thanking us? We're just happy that you're here, and we don't realize that just having the platform and allowing people to speak their truth is so much more important than maybe what we initially sought out to, right? Like, we just enjoy these conversations. We wanted to start recording them, and then we realized how much more beneficial it is for people to join and tell their story. And so I thank you for having the courage and willingness to jump on here today. And I do have, if we could go a little longer, I do want to talk about some of the things regarding PTSD. I had a few questions that I think would be good for people to hear.
Before we do that,
Okay.
I want to come back to why this is so important. And historically, this was what we used to do, right? So there's a guy by the name of Grossman. He wrote a book on killing. Really powerful book when I was a young lieutenant. But what I glossed over when I read the book the first time before I went to combat was, in the old days we used to sit around a fire after a battle,
Mm-hmm.
and we talk to each other. And yeah, there's probably some drinking, right? There's probably a number of other chemicals that were being used at the time, but they were dealing with what just happened around a fire, and they would talk to each other and they would deal with it right then and there.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere around, World War II, we stopped talking. We stopped depending on each other and having this kind of real conversation
Mm-hmm.
about real problems that we're dealing with. And we started to believe this idea that we have to be independent and resilient, and the American myth of the strong man, right?
Yeah.
Um, that is not strength. That
No.
is not who we are as beings. We need each other to be better.
Yeah, we do. I don't know where that went. And even, I mean, I think outside of war and military, but in general, like, how far off have we come from just natural human nature and like human needs, what it is to be a human. I think that sense of community, um, that's a whole nother topic we could talk, like me, like go for days on, but like just
Good.
another time. Yeah. Where
Steve
the
Magnus is writing about that right now.
who is that?
Steve Magnus,
Steve Magnus.
right?
Okay.
Um, I, I, I can't remember the name of his most current book, but the previous book was Do Hard Things.
Mm,
And he is talking about, you know, this is how we deal with reality.
mhm,
And this is where we gain, the strength to be able to deal and be better the next time is
mhm.
by talking about it together and
Yeah.
working through it and laughing and dealing with the oxytocin and crying together and
Yeah.
dealing with the cortisol and working through it and doing the hard work of being real with each other. Because his theory is that we are all redlining
Mhm.
right now, to your point.
Yeah. I have kind of come on this journey as well. And I had a big challenge all growing up where I'm very good at talking about how I'm feeling. I'm a fairly decent communicator. And my mom always told me growing up, like, that's your superpower, and I had a really hard time. Like my dad was that stone cold, never talked about his emotions, didn't really open up. Although I spent probably so much more time, like he drove me to all of my sports stuff. Because he owned his own business. So like, and my mom was a realtor. She was always busy doing, I mean, like realtors have to work when everybody else is free, that's not so weekends and all the showings and things like that. So, but it's funny, I spent so much time with him and I felt like I didn't really have a really good connection with him because I expected so much more than what he had ever, like, it was the way he's best friends
Okay.
with his dad, but they didn't have that. They just were with each other all the time. The presence was their relationship. Um, the dedication of work, and they still work together. They were both here earlier today, and he's 84, turned 84 yesterday, and he still works with my dad. Goes on the job site, and but that was I went on a little side road there, but that's where my mom said, like, but if anybody can get him to like open up and communicate, like, it's you, because like I just lay it out there. Like, take it or leave it. Like, I have to say how I'm feeling. And I hope that you take it the right way. And like, we can move forward, better together. Right. And that kind of got me to, well, until he did something called impact, is like impact therapy, where he went and did this thing. And this was after my parents divorced, and it changed him forever. I mean, he had to sing in front of a group. He had to, like, they had to open up and like talk, and it was like very intense therapy in a group. And it changed. Like, I was like, who the hell are you? And now me and my dad have that relationship that I always like strived for, and it was because of a communal experience of opening up, having deep conversations, sharing
Yeah.
fears, singing in front of one another. Like, my dad singing is like absurd to me because he's just this brute. And he's just a completely changed man. And it was from a communal, like, sitting around and opening up. And that's the bravest thing that anybody can do. And as we circle this back to PTSD, I'd
Yeah.
love to know how it's like you knew, or when you knew, and did you know right away it was PTSD, or were there signs or things that happened? You're like, wait a minute. And how, like, that the length of that journey of like how it escalated, and how that, like, the whole timeline of it all, because I think people may not know they have PTSD. I'm sure people have maybe an inkling, but like, what are some of the symptoms, and what were the things that kind of triggered for you, that you're like, okay, wait, I think I have this, and then how long? I'm loading you up with like 10 questions here, but like, we'll get into it. But how did it start?
Um, well, so I redeployed after being a company commander um, in combat in '05, and we did something called a periodic health assessment, post deployment health assessment (PHA). And so it's post deployment, and there's a bunch of questions, and the questions are, how do you feel today? Are you going to hurt yourself? all these other things. And then there's one question about, did you witness death? Did you cause death? And how does it make you feel? And
Mm.
so the one time in my life as an officer that I was honest, I wrote it down in that PHA
That you were honest.
that I was honest.
So you've done these before, but
But
didn't.
this one, right, the first one, this is the first one, my first deployment, 0405. I come back, I write it down, nobody contacts me. I'm like, okay.
So you said
Nobody.
yes.
I said yes. I
Wow.
said yes. Nobody contacts me, so I think I'm supposed to do what everybody else has taught me to do, right?
Wow.
Bury it. Just bury it. Just, do whatever you're going to do, you know, and I just left it there. And I left the infantry in '09, and I buried myself in work, right? I just, you've done this. We had that conversation about how, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you could outwork anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And so you just bury yourself in work and you dedicate yourself into learning everything you can about strategy. And you bury yourself in this work, and it's not the same as leading men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, developing policy is not the same as developing men. And there's not a lot of you know reification, more of this return on investment to creating these policies, trying to make these long-term changes. You don't see the fixes that you create. They're 3 to 5 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
The opioid epidemic that I worked on, um, we're only now seeing the results of the work from 2015, 16, and 17. The reduction in deaths. Um, it took that long, right, to see the work that we were doing back then to now.
Yeah.
And so there's no dopamine fix. There's no endorphin hit, that's busting through the blood brain barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And all you're seeing is just you're not of value. So these cycles got faster for me, where I would go into these depressive states about being useless and guilty about not doing something more useful.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my wife finally realized, hey, bud, you are not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the part nobody realizes, right? Is our loved ones are going through it 10 times because they're,
Mm-hmm.
10 times as guilty that they can't help you.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
see the cycle. When I talk to people about finding out what your strengths and weaknesses are, I always say, go ask your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
They know you better than you know yourself. Right. And so Eileen watched me just spiral out of control. Um, and she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to help me. And so she called my best friends, and, you know, Joel's the only one who showed up. He came in and he showed up and he pulled me out, and he's like, I will never forget this, right? I don't remember the day. I don't remember because I was lost.
Yeah.
I was completely numb to the world. Um, he comes downstairs where I buried myself in pity in my metaphorical hole and physical hole, and he just sits down. He says, "Hey, bud, how you doing?" No judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And Eileen had the strength to do that. I didn't. Best thing that ever happened to me was meeting her.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, you know, um, that's the only way I found my way through it.
Having a strong support system.
Having Eileen and Joel and Amy and the Newsoms take care of me,
Yeah.
and had Eileen not had the strength to do that, I
Is
wouldn't
she the
be.
one who contacted Joel?
She is the one who I did not.
Mm.
And Joel immediately hopped on a plane and he was out here. He dropped his entire life to come here because it wasn't, there was nothing Eileen could do anymore. It was
Yeah.
beyond what she could do. And she knew it.
Yeah.
She had the strength to say that.
Hmm.
I didn't have that strength. I didn't have that courage.
Hmm.
She had that much love for me to be able to say, I need help.
Hmm. Like there's no waiting anymore.
There's not.
Something that has, and this is timeline wise, this was what
Last October, November,
last October, November. And how many years had you been out of service?
3 years at that point.
3 years at that point. And the way that you noticed, like what were the symptoms? Like I think we see in TV shows and stuff, like PTSD, people flip, like hearing a loud noise in a restaurant, like flipping a table, right? Or like, like just these reactions to situations. Like were there any like experiences like that for you that you were like, whoa, like cortisol, just like the car moment you said where you
The
confronted him?
car moment was a used to be a moment that would send me towards the vicious cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there would be something that I felt guilty about.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And the vicious cycle being, why did I do that? Like, you're better than that. Like, and then that triggered the negative. Uh,
you know the language. You
yeah,
know exactly what I'm telling myself in
yeah.
my head, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm all stuck in that head,
Mm-hmm.
and those voices take over, and it doesn't matter how wrong they are. The demons run the show,
Yeah.
right?
Logic doesn't matter. Even
Logic
when you're
doesn't.
saying it to yourself repeatedly, like what, like it doesn't change. Like the feeling doesn't go away. You still are like, logically that makes sense, but you suck. Like
Yeah,
kind of the narrative, right?
that is the narrative, right? You suck.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I can say that and say that in public for a different reason, right? Where I'm trying to minimize the amount of experience that I have doing some things.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different way when I say it that way.
Yeah.
But when I when I close the door and I'm alone and the voices take over,
Yeah.
I can't. There are moments I can't control that, and so um, again, I had to
Right.
stabilize my physical activity
Yeah.
to be able to deal with that, to be able to even talk about it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I did two workouts this morning to be ready for this.
That's awesome. I mean, but it helps, right?
Helps.
It helps clear, and sometimes just moving clears that wall that's like this perceived wall of anxiousness or what, like you're walking into the lion's den and
Incredible description.
yeah, you know what you're going to feel when you go into that, but doing some physical activity or something before minimizes that stress or the cortisol, right?
Replaces it. Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, and so now we go 3 years of no help. Were there, did you deal with like substance abuse
Of
or
course.
lots of a lot of different things, I'm sure, of like,
Right. So I think I have 30 bottles of mind altering medication from the VA that I did go to get help.
yeah.
Right. And I have naloxone or naltrexone, right? The anti drinking medication. I have 2 or 3 bottles of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it but I don't want to numb myself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't want to be I don't want to be drunk so that I'm numbing the I want to live in the world that I'm in. I actually like my wife. She's good people,
Mm-hmm.
right? I like people.
Mm-hmm.
I care about people. And so I had to find a way to say that is more important. That virtuous cycle is more important to create and um,
Nurture, build on. Yeah.
than the vicious cycle.
Mm-hmm. And that decision was made thank goodness you had Eileen to make that decision for you, kind of force your hand.
She did.
And even though you knew you needed help, you weren't going to be the one. You were going to you were going to see it through yourself, which could have resulted in a number of different ways, right?
Could have. Amy is as real a friend as anyone can be. She said, "But I know you don't want to kill yourself. You've said that 100 times, but really, you're doing it slowly."
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, "Oh
Jeez,
shit,
jeez.
I am." Right. And so these are the kinds of friends you have to build around yourself that are willing to have these real talks with you, the kind that we're having, Taylor, right now.
Yeah, it's not easy.
It's not.
It's not easy, and it's not easy to. I mean, one thing I think we always associate it is like calling people on their shit. Like, I'm worried about you. This could be like I know you deserve better, or I know this isn't you, like those kind of conversations that we see in the movies, but for some reason we don't have a lot of that, or at least I felt like I lacked a lot of that in my life.
Right.
And it's because I was looking in the wrong places,
Yeah.
you know, and it takes it if you're looking for that in your life, I think you naturally need to. It starts by having setting your own standards and reciprocating those standards to friends and to these close people in your life, and how they reciprocate or don't reciprocate will show you who those people are. And by setting, you're expecting those standards from them, and how they react to it will help you find out who those people are, right? I
Yes.
know we're Go ahead.
No, you're 100%. And in all I can say, all we can do, right, is do what we're doing right now, is be as real as we can be. As painful as it is to show our vulnerabilities,
Mm-hmm.
each time we do it, we're a little stronger,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're a little more courageous, and we really are loving the people that we're around in a more meaningful way.
Yeah.
That's all we can do.
Yep.
We can't do more than that.
It reaffirms too. And um, I have a little thing to say, and then I think I want to get into, we'll kind of start closing up and get into like how people can get help, what the direction is there. But I was going to say, I had a quote in that I posted the other day, and it said, "The universe buries strange jewels deep within us all, and then stands back to see if we can find them." And that's by Elizabeth Gilbert. But I loved that, and I think not just within us all, but I always say like it's God works in mysterious ways. Everybody says that, but how even with the absolute life, me and Steven had both like kind of got busy with work, and like all these things are happening, and we're not taking the time to like start like record episodes and get this stuff lined up. And then out of nowhere, we connect, and I connect with another lady that's an actual client of mine, and through work, and get this reaffirmation of like, you need to keep doing this. And or just having the conversation with you the other day at the coffee shop, I was just like, I mean, I wish we recorded that, too, because it's just like,
It was so natural.
yeah. And when I walk out of these conversations, I'm done recording. Like I'm like, how can I have another conversation like that? And that's how me and Steven really started this, because we just loved having these conversations. And it's like going to church for me. And it's that sense of community for me. And like these people that we talk with, like this love, it really certifies like the level of importance it is to have that kind of community, and people that you can be like open and share these types of experiences. And like there's a deeper level of friendship, respect, and like I know you, You know what I mean? Instead of what is so unfortunate, but our world is so surface level now, and we don't get to the depths of people, and people are more guarded than ever to because what they see is the highlight reel of everybody's lives, right? I think that was like, yeah, that was the quote the day before was the reason we struggle with insecurity is because we compare our behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. And so it would just, you know, I always tell myself, especially in triathlons, like comparison is the death of joy. And like we don't allow ourselves to see the improvements we've made and feel the improvements we feel. Like I have to remind myself that like, dude, I got 3 kids, I've had 3 collapsed lungs. Like I have a reason to not be as competitive as I would think I could be, but it's like I have a full-time job, it's like and unless you allow yourself to believe those reasons and excuses is what I call them. And recently I've been working on saying, like, dude, you're doing it. Like, that's all that matters. Like, and you're
All
working
that
to
matters.
improve. It's the process. Like, you're doing the right things. And that's what you should be proud of and not downgrade what you're doing because it wasn't competitive in,
Right.
the world of like endless steps of people better and doing things better and whatnot, right? Like you got to fall in love with the process of it. But um, yeah, I just love that this is, one of the things I get to say I'm grateful for is that I have started this, and even though it really, we're still seeing where this goes, it's that I get to meet and interview and get to know incredible people like you, Ad. So thank you for sharing your story.
I'm still not glad to share it.
But I
Um,
understand. I understand.
and it's getting easier,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so the first place that people have got to find help, um, you know, call the VA helpline. That's a good start point, right? And get with your brothers and sisters because they're going through the exact same thing, and they need someone that can walk with them. You know, get in the foxhole, and if you want someone that can help you get out of the foxhole, get a hold of me.
Mhm.
Find me. I'm easy to find. You found me really easily, right, Taylor? I mean,
Mhm.
LinkedIn, face, Facebook. Um, I I don't have any answers, but I
Mhm.
can listen and I can walk with you.
Mhm.
And so, and we can work together to find someone else that can work with you closer. And I used to tell people all the time, and I have a pile of rocks somewhere. People gave me rocks. They literally gave me a little plaque that said, "Thanks for taking our rocks." Throw the rock in my rucksack. I'm good with it.
Mhm.
I'll carry it with you. So, you know, start with the VA, find a church, ideally a church that doesn't judge.
Yeah.
Um, you know, find a community of some kind, go work out with friends, create new friends, um, and just be real with each other. We need to talk to each other more often. Get off, get off your phone, quit numbing your feelings and deal with it.
Mhm.
Work with someone that will deal with it with you. Eileen is working with me. We're having real conversations like we've never had before. Um, the relationship with Joel and Amy really deep before, um, and now we have those kinds of how we're moment. Today was a bad day. Yes, we have those. We reach out to each other, probably not as good as we should,
Mhm.
but we do. And by talking through it, getting around that campfire like we just did, it's another rock out of my rucksack,
Mhm.
right? I'm not hiding it
And I'm glad. because your story is important. You are worth it. You deserve a better life, Ad. And through your pain and your journey, you're going to help so many people. And I'm just so grateful that you were here today. And I can't wait to have more conversations with you going forward and to follow your journey as well. Obviously, you're always welcome on the Absolute Life podcast. So we'll have to do some check ins down the road.